Natasha and thank you so much for joining me today. Well, I have another fun video using our embossing folders in a slightly different way today. So I'm starting off with just a regular sheet of paper and I want to cut this down to be kind of as long as I can get it. So all I'm going to do is cut a 5.5 inch width. Then I want my finished card to end up being 4.25 by 5.5 inches, and so I just want my outside flaps to be as long as they can be. It doesn't matter how long because we're going to be cutting them out, but I want the inside, of course, to be the regular 4.25 size. So that pretty much means that you have to score at the 7.5 inches, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what size paper that you start with, and even if you don't have a long enough piece of paper, then you can always add strips on. So you could, where I have done the scores, you could always do an extra piece of cardstock to create that flap there. So if you don't have a piece that's long enough, that's fine. Now, in general, this video is around using or looking at your embossing folders a little bit different. I'm using this one today. This is the Delightful Daisies Daisy Meadow. I have been loving this embossing folder. I'm using it to death, and in fact, a couple of videos ago, I actually changed these daisies to look into sunflowers, and so I have been having a whole lot of fun at changing this and using it how it suits me a little bit better. But today we are going to be sort of using some of the pattern that it creates and cutting the rest out. So I'm taking one of the flaps, this happens to be the left hand one, putting it into my embossing folder, and then I can run this through my Big Shot and it will go through nicely. So I've opened up the whole card. Then I'm going to take that off and then I'm going to do the other side. So I sort of had the embossing folder left hand centered for the left hand one and then right hand aligned for the right hand one, and that way we get sort of the two different patterns of the embossing folder, if that makes sense. This will kind of all make sense once you see the video. Now at the moment they sort of overlap and they don't quite meet up in the middle and all that, but we're going to fix it. And so what I want to do is I want to take the pattern and sort of separate it. So I can see a natural sort of separating line in through here, and this is going to work for, you just have to have a search through your embossing folders and see what you can kind of create a natural line up through. Now I want to make sure, they don't have to meet in the middle, but I want to make sure I kind of have a different pattern on each side. Now what this might mean, if you don't have sort of two sides to the embossing folder that you can use, is that on one side, the left hand side, you use the folder up the right way essentially, and then on the other side you might turn the folder upside down and you're going to get sort of a mirror image or upside down mirror image, and so it will look different. So sometimes it's just a matter of looking at your products or looking at whatever you have in your stash and seeing how we can change it up and use them a little bit differently rather than just sort of embossing a front panel. So these are going to be, and if you had an image that sort of had a large enough embossing folder, perhaps a 6x6 embossing folder, you might be able to have these meet in the middle. I'm not even sure. As I said, it depends on the pattern that you choose, it depends on the size of the embossing folder, it depends on the size card, but for me, I am going to add a few bits just to make this into a gorgeous, gorgeous card. I love the end result of this, and I just think it's a little bit different to just a normal card. So all I'm doing is using my fussy cutting scissors. These are the Cutter Bee scissors. I absolutely love these. They are have a nice fine sharp point at the end, and that means I can get in all of these little bits in between the daisy petals, and so I can get a really nice clean smooth cut. Now I did make a bit of a mess. I've actually got a couple of bigger bits there. I'm going to save those and put those aside, but all the little bits I can get rid of. Then I'm going to take this Buffalo Plaid stencil. This one happens to be from the Crafter's Workshop, and I am going to create a little bit of background pattern because with my embossing folder, the leaves are obviously quite delicate and they don't meet in the middle. So I'm going to sort of solve that problem by adding a little bit extra. As I said, depending on the embossing folder that you choose, yours might meet in the middle, and that's okay if they do. It's also brilliant if they don't. Now I'm just going to take some very light tumbled glass ink. This one happens to be a Distress Oxide. And I'm just choosing any pattern. I thought the buffalo plaid would go really nice with the gorgeous daisies. I don't want this to be too bright or dark because I don't want it to overtake the daisies. They are going to be quite soft. They're going to be kept pretty much white. So I just need to remember to balance that with whatever colours that I am putting behind those images. So I'm just using a finger dauber. Any ink, anything that you put here is going to be absolutely fine. If you wanted to just take a light blue piece of paper and then you could add some white ink, some, for example, the Unicorn Hero Arts white ink, and you could do the reverse of this. I think that would look really nice and also give you a bit more colour. But this one is fairly white with a little bit of blue buffalo plaid. So I'm going to do that to both sides of these little panels, and then at the moment I just took a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch sheet and then I cut it down the middle. That's how I got those little panels. Now, in between these daisies, there is some little gaps, I guess. So I'm just going to take the same tumbled glass ink, and it just means I'm going to be able to define the daisies a little bit better because, as I said, I'm pretty much keeping them white, which means that I don't want there to be too much white space. I want you to be able to make out the daisy, see it clearly. When you look at the embossing, then you want to be able to know what the image is. So I'm just taking a really tiny little paintbrush and I'm just going to go down in between the petals. It's essentially colouring in the background. I did a video not too long ago on recreating the packaging of this embossing folder. And whilst those images have obviously been digitally edited and, made to look as beautiful as they can be, I think our results were pretty good. So I'm not straying too far from that, although I didn't use a paintbrush to colour in the background last time, but I'm keeping the daisies pretty much white, and I'm going to go in with some Lunar paste on the centre of the daisies. Now, I recently purchased a few more Lunar paste. I had the Slippery When Wet colour for a really long time, and then I finally branched out and got a few other ones. So I'm actually going to take the Slippery When Wet colour, that's this one here, which I am nearly at the bottom of my jar. That's how much I've enjoyed using it. And this one is a newer one. I think this is perhaps the Shooting Star or Over the Moon. I can't remember which one it is. It's the yellow one, and I'm actually going to mix these together to get the colour that I'm after. One is a little bit too gold for my liking, and one is a little bit too bright yellow, so I figure we mix them together, and that's sort of the perfect colour for the inside of the daisies. If you add water to these, then they make an absolutely gorgeous sort of just paint, I guess metallic-y sort of paint, and I'm going to add these to the centre. Stunning. It creates a little bit of shine, it creates a little bit of dimension, and then sometimes I add a little bit of white, either by using some acrylic paint or a white gel pen into the centres just to give them a little bit more dimension too. But a couple of really simple things, just adding in that background blue and the centre of the daisies, and it picks up the embossing folder a long way, I think. Now, the background of these panels was really just a little bit too white, especially because the daisies, they just didn't stand out quite enough. So I'm going over very light-handedly with the same tumbled glass blue ink, and it's fantastic because the pattern of the stencil stays there, probably because I was a little bit more heavy-handed with that. So I like it that it's got a really subtle sort of tone-on-tone pattern in the background. That was a little bit accidental. I was going to be okay if this covered it up and I would add in more pattern, but actually it stayed and that was perfect. So sometimes you have to adjust your expectations along the way. None of my card making goes the way I expect it to, and I often take a lot of twists and turns that I perhaps wasn't expecting. So this is where I'm going to put these together. You can see these gorgeous petals. I love how this comes into the center as is. But I think it covers up more of the center of the card and makes it easier to write a message, a bit more practical if we close these up with the panel. So personal choice, I have put one little bit of double-sided tape on the inside there. And then just to keep these panels in place, I have used some removable adhesive. This is the Tombow Mono removable adhesive. I'm just using this behind those panels just so it's one less thing to hold onto, I guess, and then I'm going to remove the double-sided tape release paper, and then on the petals I'm going to use some liquid glue, and that just means that no matter what, I know these aren't going anywhere. I'm also going to use a couple of pairs of reverse tweezers. This can hold it in place while I work on the other side and do exactly the same thing. Then once those inside flaps have been attached together, I can just use my finger to rub off the removable adhesive. Now for this card today, I am going to create a belly band. Now I just want to show you one of the ways that I go about this, just because I really love using the burlap ribbon or twine, whatever you'd like to call it. And so I'm just going to pop this panel, leave it all to dry, put it under something with a little bit of weight, put some paintbrushes on top of it, and then I'll show you how I create this and make it a little bit more sturdy, just as a belly band for the card. So I'm going to take a piece of plain copy paper, just really lightweight paper. Then I'm taking some double-sided adhesive. This is a wider, I think this is 0.75 of an inch, so 3/4 of an inch. And then I just pop it down flat on a piece of paper. I'm not sure of the length at the moment, that's why I'm just doing the length of this piece. And then I'm going to figure out make sure that it's wide enough for what I need, and then figure out how much to sort of trim off. Because in my absolutely ideal perfect world, this backing piece of paper here would be just a smidgy hair thinner than what the burlap ribbon is going to be. So all I'm doing is sort of just guesstimating how wide this is going to be, and this ends up being pretty good. So now I'm going to just take off the release paper from the strip that I created. I'm going to do it bit by bit, otherwise I find it a little bit tricky to manage. But I just pull off about 1/3 of it or so, and then line this up so it's nice and straight. This means I can use this gorgeous ribbon as a belly band, but it makes it a little bit more sturdy and actually serves its purpose. So I just trim off the ends. At this point I don't know how long it's going to be, and my preference is to use a hot glue gun to close this up. I just think that's going to work faster and maybe better than liquid glue as well. So I just roughly measure how wide I want it to be. This is just a spare card in here that I'm just using in place. I'm leaving a little bit of room because I know that my actual card has a bit more dimension to it, whereas this is just a plain card base. Add a little bit of glue, find out where I need it to be. I've already cut it down a little bit shorter. As I said, I'm not doing it super tight because we want this to be able to slide off nice and easy. We don't want it to be annoying for the recipient and have to sort of battle to get it on and off. So I'm just making it nice and easy. And then once that is done, we are pretty much finished up our card. I decided not to have a sentiment on this one today. That doesn't bother me at all. If you wanted one, you could either put it on either side of the front, or you could have it going across the middle. But I like the way that the flower petals close on this one, and they kind of match up in the middle. I like that background buffalo plaid blue. I really like this card. I had fun creating this one, and it was something a little bit different for me, and using our embossing folders in a really fun, creative way. So I hope that you've enjoyed this card. As per usual, I will leave links down below, but do have a search in your stash for an embossing folder that you are able to use in a similar way. And if you were inspired by this card today, I'd love to see your versions. So come over and join me at Come Crafting with Natasha on Facebook, and you can post your pictures and videos of your makes and creations there. But thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that you have enjoyed this card. I hope that you're having a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks. Bye.